Bill Jones, Bill Jones, Big Bad Jones.
I'm the last chair of Texas Baptist Committee and got to be chair for several years during Bill's leadership. And I wanted to thank all of you for coming today to celebrate a truly great man who has done some amazing work, dedicating himself to Texas Baptists and the kingdom of God. And we are honored for the opportunity to celebrate him. I have a few opening remarks, then we'll have our invocation, and then we will have dinner. So a couple of little logistics issues first. One, if you happen to slip by the tables without paying for dinner, I know George would like everyone to actually pay for dinner, so please do so. And I made the joke to my father that, hey, Dad, did you pay for my dinner tonight? And he said, you know, son, I don't think you've ever been a time in which I haven't paid for your dinner. And so I paid for his dinner outside just a moment ago. If you already paid, we paid twice, and we need to talk to somebody about that. But you know, it's always the first time for everything. I only have this one opportunity to say my own remarks, so I'll make them as brief as I can. Bill, I want to thank you again for your leadership and for your work at Texas Baptist Committed. My understanding of the story of how you got involved with Texas Committed is as follows. And I say it's my understanding because I may get some of the facts wrong, but I've learned from enough Baptist preachers that you don't really have to get them right. You just have to embellish them enough, and they'll come across just fine. Okay? Yeah, that'll work. But my understanding is my father was the executive director, and he was sending these, columns out, and they sometimes had some very insightful things in them, but the grammar was so bad you couldn't tell. And so at one point in time, Bill said, why don't I help you with this, which led to an editing relationship that lasted for quite some time. That's close. Roughly close, which ultimately led, whenever David Currie stepped down from Texas Baptist Committed, to Bill stepping into his shoes. And he came into Texas Baptist Committed at a time in which so many different things were changing and happening with the state. We had been very successful at Texas Baptist Committed in a lot of the goals that it was trying to accomplish. Some of the fundamentalists decided to go a different direction, and so the conversation was changing, and it became a very personal, almost a church-by-church level conversation, and Bill led that discussion. And what I was always so amazed with was Bill's willingness to step in and have those difficult conversations, to go and talk with the leadership of the Baptist General Convention of Texas and to say, this is what's going right, this is what you need to work on. And what Bill has always been so good at, it's one of the, if there is an empathy meter, Bill broke it a long time ago. When Bill is talking to you, you are the most important person in the world at that moment. And that's how he makes you feel. You know that he truly wants to see you succeed, and he used those gifts with those personal relationships at the BGCT during his time there. And we just truly watched him through those difficult times really accomplish some great things. And so I want to thank you, Bill, for your time and for your passion, for your true passion for what it means to be a Texas Baptist. Your embrace of the freedom of conscience. You're just one of the most genuine people I've ever met, and I'm very thankful to know you, and thankful that you're a part of this story, and proud to have worked with you. There are some people we want to recognize that are here today. Many members of Bill's Sunday school class, Epiphany, was here earlier. I think they were the ones that were delaying, kind of talking over at the beginning. They were chatting, having epiphanies. If you're a member of his class, will you please stand up and let us know how they're here to support him. There are a couple of members of the TBC board here, myself and Charlie Johnson here, who you'll hear Charlie speak of earlier. I think Wesley may sneak in at some point in time. I know he was planning on coming. Some others have vacations and other travel that prevented them from being here. But we are all with you in spirit and all thankful for the work that you have done. And then obviously his family. His son Travis is here. His daughter Allison and her husband Adam are here. His sister Patsy and her husband Palmer. I don't know where they ended up. They're over there. Excellent. And then Joanna, thank you again. Thank you so much for giving of Bill to us and for allowing him to spend so much time and effort keeping some people who needed to be reined in, and otherwise, truly helping people in this state recognize the importance of recognizing that tolerance is a gift from man, but freedom is a gift from God, and working on that tirelessly. Next, I want to ask Matt.
And my niece Stephanie.
Oh, my niece Stephanie. I missed Stephanie. Yes, thank you, Stephanie, for coming as well. Anyone else I missed, Bill?
I think that's it.
Well, I'm trying to keep up in time because people keep bringing more gifts to the front, and we're not going to have time to get through them all. So I'm trying to go. Next, we're going to have Matt Dodrill do our invocation. Matt? And then once we're done with our invocation, please have dinner, and we'll come back in a little bit.
Let us pray together. God of mercy and justice and love, meet us here in this place, even as you are the one who gather us. May the stories we share tonight bear witness to the incursion of your kingdom, and may our laughter be a reminder that the work you've called us to, though hard, is also good and delightful. Grant us hearts that anticipate something new, O Lord, something surprising and worthy of awe and wonder, that we may see and understand that our mission here isn't really our mission at all, but your mission. Draw us ever deeper into this work, O God, and grant us good cheer and fun tonight, and maybe even a little mischief, that we may experience a foretaste of the great banquet yet to come. Hear this prayer we offer through Christ Jesus our Lord. Amen.
Yes, before we all serious and pious and holy, I'm going to bring a little revelry to the drill. I need your help on this. This is all your participation, but it's real easy. So you go, Bill Jones, Big Bad Jones. Can you sing that with me? Bill Jones, Big Bad Jones. You'll know your cue. Did his college years at OBU, had his battle with doubts as most of us do, found his faith again, learned a lesson or two, was a better man because of what he went through. Bill Jones. Bill Jones, Big Bad Jones. Got a music degree, then one day he decides he'd rather be a writer. He puts his music aside. Turns out to be pretty smart. He enjoys the ride, and through the thick and thin, he lets the spirit guide. Bill Jones, Big Bad Jones. Then the troubles began with the Brewers of Hate. Hank Patterson's crew wants to capture the state. Bill and David Currie say, we can't afford to hesitate. We've got to kick them in their aspirations before it's too late. Bill Jones. Big Bad Jones. So with a heartfelt conviction to set things right, he waded in with the TBC and joined the fight. One way he knew he could was by the things he could write. But when the darkness starts gathering, that's the time to shine the light. Bill Jones. Big Bad Jones. Now Bill's like Zacchaeus in his stature, kind of small, but we've all known bigger men afraid to heed the call. This man loves the Lord, lives the life, and gives his all. Now, they would all agree in our eyes, he's standing tall. Bill Jones. Big Bad Jones. God bless you, Bill.
Thank you, sir. I told everyone to be extremely serious today, so I'm a little
Marv Knox could not be with us tonight, and Marv is, of course, the, Suzii, what is his title? Coordinator. He's the coordinator of Fellowship Southwest, former editor of the Baptist Standard, and so he made a brief video, and after that one, I'll say another word about the one to follow.
Hi there, Bill, and good evening, friends. I wish I could be with you this evening. Longstanding commitments kept me away. But I am so glad that you're together celebrating Bill Jones. And Bill, we are so thankful for your faithfulness, for your steadfastness throughout the decades, through your leadership of Texas Baptist Committed and in many other ventures. And speaking of TBC and faithfulness through the generations, I couldn't think about this evening without thinking about so many that have made TBC possible and done so much for all of us across the years. Of course, David Currie and also Herbert Reynolds and the entire Baugh family, 3 generations, John and Eula May and Babs and now Jackie and Julie. And of course, Patsy Ayers and Phil Strickland and Bob Stevenson. And well, there you go. I've started naming names, and I can't name all of them. So maybe later y'all will talk around the table about the people who have made TBC so important and so strong through the years. But Bill is one of them, and we are grateful. And Bill, we celebrate you. I feel so thankful and blessed that Fellowship Southwest was created almost exactly a year ago, that we could be part of the legacy inheritors of TBC. We will take faithfully and responsibly our opportunity, our challenge, our mandate to carry forward, to stand up for Baptist ideals and distinctives, to educate congregations and individuals about these important principles that we stand on, to inform, to inspire, to encourage, because we know that we can do together what we can't do alone. And so we will work hard to be good stewards of this legacy. And tonight I say, bless you, Bill. Thanks so much. And we're
Bill
grateful for you.
and I got an email, I guess 2 or 3 days ago, from Babs Baugh, and Babs was just distraught that her doctor and her husband, and I'm not sure who was stronger in this respect, prohibited her from traveling in the next few weeks to events like this. And Babs hates to miss a party, especially with her friends, if you know Babs. And so it just so happened I have some grandchildren down there in San Antonio and was there. And so I called her and said, all right, Babs, how are you? And she was in tears that she couldn't come. And so I said, all right, I'll tell you what, I'm coming with my iPhone, and we're going to do a video so you can send your blessing to Bill. So Babs did write things down, but it didn't matter. And it took 3 or 4 takes, and so even then, it was stream of consciousness. So this is Babs to you, Bill.
Hi, Bill. This is Babs, and I am so honored to be here to help you with your giant celebration. You know what I think of you when I see you is, what do you do to go to sleep at night? Because most people count sheep. I'm thinking you must count initials like TBC, SBC, CBF. All these little initials are running around over your head. That must be hard to sleep. Your experience with TBC should qualify you to run cattle or to run with the big bulls. You are admired and loved by so many folks, especially my girls, Jackie and Julie and me. And we want to wish you the happiest celebration ever. Thanks.
That's sweet. Currie, in a previous take, she explained the cattle part of that being you, and John Baugh being the one with the big bulls. I don't really know exactly what that meant, but good. All right. Yeah. Good. Well, this is a celebration of Bill Jones's retirement. But part of this is the story of Texas Baptist Committed and the fact that Bill led this Texas Baptist Committed group all the way to the end of its existence. There are a few things to say about this that I think we should recognize. The first is how Bill Brewster reminded me that Texas Baptist Committed started with Charles Wade and Bill Brewster in his study. What year would you think that would have been, Bill? 1985. They each had to go out and raise $50,000, which they did.
George, let me just say, Charles Wade
Yeah. Right. Well, it's a good thing for us to take care of our daughters, and Charles couldn't be here because of that. But in any case, originally, many of us are old enough to remember Baptist Committed before Texas Baptist Committed in terms of it being the organization that tried its best to wrest back stewardship of the Southern Baptist Convention from those who had dedicated themselves to taking it. And we failed, but Texas Baptist Committed continued beyond that effort, and the creation of CBF, of course, was that which succeeded Baptist Committed's effort. Texas Baptist Committed was deliberately intent on trying to maintain a fair and equitable Baptist General Convention of Texas beyond the Southern Baptist Wars, and to say this would be a big tent for everyone. And for many years, that was the case, and it was a very successful work. And after the initial person who worked for Texas Baptist Committed, Neil Rogers, was only a year, and then David Currie came on. And David went from part-time to full-time quickly. And Bill said that it's easy to do when you raise your own salary. Isn't that right, David? But in any case, that work continued for a good long while, and most of us are keenly aware of what it was and why it was. But Bill then succeeded David in this work and continued until it was time to say enough. And sometimes, Baptists don't do that very well. And we don't do it often enough, is to say enough. And I'll say a little more about that at the end of this time, but that's enough for now. For now, I want to call David Currie and Suzii Paynter and Charlie Johnson to join me up here, and each of you find your chair, and Suzii, I think we all know you should be in the middle. Because each has some reflections about Bill and about this work that I think are important.
I was telling him to video it, and he pointed out there's kind of somebody doing that.
Yeah, in fact, I've got 2 microphones on. I feel like a West Texas sharpshooter or something here, Anyway, this should pick you all up okay, I suppose. Let's start, Suzii, with you and talk a little bit about when you think about Bill. I know what we've talked about is the significance of one voice, one person, and what a difference it makes.
Well, let me begin by saying that I think of Bill as the honorable layperson leader. So let me talk about that for just a moment. Bill, to me, and I'm going to read this title so I get it exactly right, is a populus deltoid. That's the official name of a cottonwood tree. When you think about the landscape of Baptist life, it's like there is this meandering river of organizations, of opportunities, of congregations, and lay people. While lay people are like the populus deltoid, the deep-rooted, fast-growing cottonwood tree. And if you're on the hills and you come down to the plain and you're looking for rivers, what do you look for? These lines of cottonwood trees that point out to you where the river is. Bill, you have been that kind of populus deltoid. The cottonwood trees are the fastest growing trees in North America.
Amen.
And if you know cottonwood trees, you know that they not only congregate along the edges of rivers like you have. You've been a part of different organizations that have been a part of our story as Texas Baptists. Never saying enough of the river, but just saying, where's the next place to go? Where's the next place to go? How do we root the next tree? One of the things we know about cottonwoods, too, is that they provide great shade, comfort, a place for meeting. Native Americans used cottonwood trees as meeting places. And historically, if you study Native American tribes, they gathered under the shade of cottonwood trees because of the comfort and because of the stature of the tree. And so I give you, my deep regard as individual, as an example of a layperson who's been that kind of symbol to us. And I'm so grateful to you. And I love that, the thought, in fact, I would say to many of you in this room, how many people in this room are lay people? Oh, man.
Amen.
Well, there's our forest.
Amen.
Oh, cottonwoods.
Amen.
It's probably worth at this moment saying we as Baptists all are lay people. Clergy are merely a subset of the laity.
And an incidental one.
A different category. But I know it's a word game, but it is a meeting about Baptist principles, isn't it? Something like that? All right. Charlie, you were on the board. What was it like being a board member with Bill?
Oh my goodness. Bill Jones is a great servant leader. Humble, hardworking, dedicated, long hours at low pay. Do I hear an amen, Bill? Bill Jones is a delight to work with. And I have the distinct privilege of working with Bill through Pastors for Texas Children because he's one of our fine board members now. And I had the good sense by the leadership of the Holy Spirit to get him lassoed in early on. George, you and I were talking earlier about how new expressions of witness are an outgrowth of our friends who have come before us. And Bill has come before us with great dedication. David and you and I and Susie and many others have been colleagues in crime for a long time. And when Bill took over, there was a little sort of regrouping and a little huddling up, but Bill recovered very quickly. And Lance already said it. Bill, you really carried some wood and water in some difficult spaces. Needs to be said. Our Baptist communion in Texas is in transition. Susie's one of the people in the world that reminds me, Charlie, don't burn any bridges. We're not going to burn any bridges. We're not going to shut any doors. But we're in a real sort of identity confusion, aren't we, Bill? And you have been one of our leaders quietly, humbly, to go, as Lance said, and represent us in some difficult conversations. We thank you for that. There are lots of people in this room. I know we're all feeling this. I just want to say it. There are lots of great leaders in this room who have been faithful for a long time, that only the Lord knows about, that aren't going to be on any platform or any dais or receive any recognition. I think there's power in this room. And I think there's real power in the Baptist voluntary witness to Christ without any institutional trapping or political power. Christ in our heart. This church represents that. Baylor University represents that. I just got to name some. Broadway Baptist and Trinity Baptist and Second Baptist Lubbock represents that. And all my congregations are represented here. Jim Hancock's over here. Jim's brother Jerry was our first musician at Second Baptist, Jim. So the great cloud of witnesses. And with that, enough, George, enough.
Thank you, Charlie. David really built the organizational structure of Texas Baptist Committed. And I know, David, that back in the years when we were counting votes, and man, you count votes. I know you'd have hard numbers, and John Baugh would send you back to get twice as many. But those were fun days, frustrating days, days of good work, but days that really still matter. What are your reflections, and when you think about the handoff to Bill? Tell us more what you think.
Well, let me go back a second to kind of the start of, I was actually hired in 1988.
Okay.
Before Richard Jackson lost in San Antonio, if he actually lost.
Speaking of
And
Hanging chads.
Well,
there were
no, it was the Electoral College.
Yeah.
It was
So, and we stayed through 1990, and then I went part-time, and I was actually in San Antonio, and Bill Brewster was chair of Baptist Committed, and Bill called and said, will you go full-time? They've hired Perry Ellis, a retired missionary. And I said, yes, under two conditions. You pay me $3,000 a month and you let me live in San Angelo. And I said, will you do that? And he said, I don't know, we don't have that kind of money. And so I said, well, if I can raise that kind of money, will you pay me $3,000 a month? He said, okay. So we moved to San Angelo. I wrote a letter, put Bill's name on it, and we raised $10,000 the first month. And I said, well, this works. And then everything else was like Wendell Berry said about one of his characters, whatever good happened, he got there by accident and by mistake. And when all of you people sent money in that were lay people, I thought, well, I should put you on an advisory board because you're the contact from that church, like First Baptist Houston, Second Baptist Houston, First Baptist Dallas, Prestonwood, Dallas. We got votes from all those places.
Don't forget First Baptist Earth.
Well, Earth was there.
Yes.
The Earths were really important because they really came. So that's kind of how that happened. And I do have to tell one Bill Brewster story. Back in that day, we had a chairman's letter column. So I would write a column for Bill and send it to him. Say, approve this or change it up however you want to. And this is really early. This is like 93. Bill calls me and says, where in the world is my column? My phone is ringing off the wall. What in the hell did you have me say? Now, that's a true story, isn't it, Bill? Because I had written some stuff and Bill hadn't bothered to really read it. And now he was anxious to find a copy. And so the lay people really made this. Bill Jones and I became friends when he was in a church that was moving more and more to fundamentalism, and that's when Bill first called me. And it really changed both of our lives. For many years, Phil Strickland was my editor. Phil is the person that I would write an article, send it to Phil. Phil would call and say, I feel the same way you do, but you know you can't publish that. And I said, no, but it sure felt good to read it, to write it. And then he would clean it up and it would go. Well, when Phil died, that's when Lance is telling stories. There were some not so good articles that got floated around out there. And so Bill stepped forward to be my editor. And Bill is a marvelous editor. And what y'all don't know is I was published in something called the San Angelo Live last Thursday morning, which is an online newspaper that supposedly goes out to 80,000 people. I wrote a marvelous article on Tuesday night.
Did you say so yourself?
And I thought, this is ready for publication. There's no reason to send this to Bill Jones. I did. Bill sent it back twice as good as it was before I wrote it. Bill continues to edit me once a month to this day. And I do not pay him for that, son.
Did you pick up the pace of their little bills and do a little bit more?
And so that's the relationship Bill and I have continued to have. He edited me forever, but he brought a real joy to my life as well because I became a part of his family. I was at Travis's wedding and other things, and it's just a very special. You know, when I lost Phil, that was extremely difficult and always will be. But Bill stepped into that void you know, when I left Baptist Committed, the first phone call I made besides Gary Elliston was to Bill Jones to talk about that. And for him to step in and carry it on the way he did, I didn't need to do it anymore because the fundamentalists had quit fighting. And if y'all don't know me real well, I'm real good at fighting, and I'm not real good at being consensus building at times. And so Bill was a better role for that because that formed Southern Baptist of Texas. And so it was a perfect transition to someone that was very gifted, and he did it for much less pay than I did, much less reward from other people than I got, and he did it extremely well, Bill, and I'm very, very proud of him.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Amen.
We wanted you to see them sitting side by side up here because they have worked side by side in so many ways with Bill over time. And they also represent not just past work, but work that has been spawned by Texas Baptist Committed. I mean, one of the things to keep in mind, I think, about this is though Texas Baptist Committed is no longer itself, there is a sense of if a seed falls in the ground and dies, then so much more can grow as a result of it. And there's a certain sadness that comes with any organization saying, our time has come. We have to acknowledge that the work we had to do has come to an end. But what we've seen is that it lives on in all these other areas, in CBF, in Fellowship Southwest, in Pastors for Texas Children, in CBF Texas, in our schools, Truett and Logston and elsewhere in the state. So we're just grateful that that's true. It always astonished me as we worked with Texas Baptist Committed that we were thought of as a sort of progressive or liberal avant-garde group of Baptists. It's true that those terms are relative, but if you really think about who Texas Baptist Committed was, it was always rooted in historic Baptist principles and ideas and practices. I was reading up on the father of modern conservatism, who is Edmund Burke. Edmund Burke is, you know, one would think that he was against change, but he actually believed that history is moving progressively according to the hand of providence. He just actually thought that it shouldn't move according to abstract principles, but it should actually move based upon a kind of organic development that should happen out of real people's lives and rooted in principles. Now, we quote people and don't always know who we're quoting, but do you realize that although George Santayana is always attributed to this quotation, it was Edmund Burke who said, "Those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it." The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Edmund Burke, often misattributed, as a matter of fact. This one caught my attention, though, too. He said that people will not look forward to posterity who never look backward to their ancestors. Texas Baptist Committed was devoted to who Baptists are and have been historically and not letting us forget that. Bill Jones came by that honestly. His father, Jace Jones, worked for the Home Mission Board and was one of the most gentle souls who did interfaith dialogue back at times when Southern Baptists cared to reach out to people of other religions like that, not only to convert them, but to listen to them and to learn from them. That didn't go well for him at the end of his career, but it was the kind of patient approach to people that made Bill who he was and made him who he was for Texas Baptist Committed also. So that when things changed, they wouldn't change willy-nilly. They would actually change in a way that was rooted in our history, that would bear the marks of who we have been, so that there's a recognizable continuity across time. Just because Texas Baptist Committed is finished doesn't mean the work that was done through Texas Baptist Committed is finished. It lives on. Whenever I think about these times, like Currie, I want to get weepy thinking about the man who was whispering in all of our ears so very often, Phil Strickland. Phil couldn't deliver his final message at the Texas Baptist Committed breakfast back in 2005, I believe it was, because he was so ill. But he asked me to do it, and this is some of the words toward the very end that I think are pertinent to us tonight. He said, "We desperately need a theology of enough. We are stewards, not owners, of what we have, at least in Christian teaching. So do we have any walls around what we will spend on ourselves? Do we have any sense of enough for ourselves? That's where the prophets will emerge. But what about one more? Denominations. Should they take risk and speak prophetically, or declare that the only real role of the denomination is meeting the needs of the churches who are members of it? To me, the answer is easy. Meeting the will of churches, vital as it is, comes in behind one other, listening for and meeting the will of God. What trumps, it was years ago. What trumps the prophetic role in denominations is fear of financial loss. And the lack of understanding what crosses they are willing to die on, if any. What is so compelling that a denomination will stand there and ignore the consequences? Do we know the answer to that question? The question must be asked of lay people and pastors and churches. Bill Jones is a layman who asked that question, who asked it enough that he made all the rest of us ask that question. And we're here tonight because we are part of the answer, still. Thank you, Bill, for all you did for Texas Baptist Committed and for everyone in this room, not only in the past, but for all that is to come still. God bless you. Good. Thank you all.
I am remiss if I don't introduce Charlie McLaughlin, who is associate at Baptist Committed for many years. Charlie, stand
good
up.
to see you back there. Thank you.
Charlie's also my cousin. His mama and my mama were sisters. And he's a brilliant man. He did a wonderful job for us. So thank you, Charlie.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before Bill comes and speaks, the second off the menu item is we have a couple of items that we'd like to give Bill as recognition. First, I have 3 mystery items that people have come up and said we want to give Bill something. And so I don't know what these are, but I'm going to give those to you. And then second, I'm going to ask David Currie, my dad, to come up, and we have a gift from several of the supporters of TBC and others that are your friends that they can give you, Bill. So come on up and we'll give it to you. We'll go from there.
Bill, we have 2 gifts. One is for me. This is a copy of Matt Tracy's Spiritual Genius. The author of this book is here, Robert Williams. Please raise your hand. Robert went and hired Payne a few years ahead of me. We both took Matt Tracy. Phil Strickland's the biggest influence on me personally. Dr. Tracy was the biggest influence theologically by far. The first day of class, he said, no matter how much you think of yourself, it's not as much as God does. He taught me that God's character was unconditional love, acceptance, and forgiveness. And he literally changed my life. And I took him all 8 semesters at our bank. I basically took a minor in math tracing. And I was there the last 4 years he taught. And I mentioned him. I teach young professionals in Sunday school, and there is not a Sunday that goes by that I don't quote Nat Tracing or allude to him. So Robert autographed the book to you, and I want you to have copies for my sons. I urge you to talk to Robert and get a hold of that book. It's a wonderful book about the life of Dr. Tracy. Secondly, we have a little something here for you. You need to put that down. Now, don't mean to be bossy, but you have to open this up. Stop you. That's true. So I think this may be something you like. You have to dig in there and see what you got.
Oh, my Lord. David knows the word. Baseball glance case. All right.
Yeah, I hope it's a little more the case. Let's see.
Okay.
Let's set this here.
So let's look at it.
Okay. You have to carry that up.
I gotta carry it. Not good with that. There's some paper. There we go.
You know, you can't look at the letters. Just when they have the letters. I'm a controlling person sometimes.
Oh my, oh my, oh my. It is autographed baseball, blue product. Folks, that's my boyhood hero, okay? My idol still is. My all-time favorite athlete. Thank you, thank you. Now, who is this from?
This is from
you?
TBC.
TBC.
and
Thank
lots of
you. Thank you.
We'll also be covering your trips to CBF next year as well. Okay?
Oh, thank you.
At least the hotel room.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Oh, wow. Is it my turn? Is that it? Well, thank you so much. Wow. Oh, I'm a little overwhelmed.
Now,
If I don't go get my remarks, we're gonna have a quiet time. Wow. This has been a wonderful night. You find out first if I'm speaking into this right, David? Okay, good, thank you. Oh my. I'll correct one thing, Lance. I edit your dad all the time, so I'll edit you here. What really happened was, it was my first year on the TBC board, and what David sent out was an email to the board.
That's right.
That was spelling challenged, grammar challenged, every other way challenged. And I was an editor for 20 years. In fact, I still was at that time. I was an editor for Countrywide Home Loans. My wife can tell you that Countrywide and TBC are only 2 of the companies that had gone under while on my watch. Just 2 of them. But I was an editor. Well, okay, thank you. Anyway, I called David and I said, David, you've got to start sending this stuff to me before you let it go out. And he did. And be careful what you ask for, because I very quickly became David Currie's editor, and I still am today. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Yes, and we did, just a few months after that, David started a column that he called A Rancher's Rumblings, and we did over 100 of those. And I edited every one of those, and it was a joy. I wish I had brought some of the titles of those. Some of the titles he came up with were just amazing. I remember one with goats in the title, Crazy Goats. But I don't remember the rest of that. But yeah, that was a joy. And like I say, I'm still editing for him, and it's still a joy. And the wonderful thing about David is he just gives me carte blanche. You know, whatever I do, he takes it. So there's no question about it. But anyway, it's been a great relationship. So anyway, that's the way it happened. Okay. But the rest of it was good. You were close. Wow, folks, thank you. I'm going to try to go to my script here. Let me just say, George Gagliardi, Big Bad Jones. I'll never forget that. And besides that, I said something on the table a while ago while we were eating. I said, I am loving this music that George is doing here. Can we all thank George for the music? Wow. And I had this a little further down in here, but I'm going to do this right now so we can do that. And that is, Suzii Paynter announced last month that she is retiring as executive coordinator at CBF. For over a decade now, she's first served us leading Texas Baptist Christian Life Commission and then CBF. Suzii, would you please stand and let us thank you one more time for your leadership. We are blessed. There are a lot of Baptist leaders in this room. There are a lot of Baptist laity who have, I know they're all laity, George, but who have done so much and contributed so much. And I look around, I see so many good friends here who I dearly love and appreciate. Thank you so much for being here. And my family, I'll say more about some of these in a little bit. Thank you, George, Mason, and Wilshire Baptist Church for hosting this dinner. Heather Mustaine, who's not here tonight, for facilitating all of the preparations. Chef Elizabeth Ferguson and your staff for the wonderful meal. David Hammonds for our sound and videography. Lance Currie and the Texas Baptist Committed Board of Directors, the former Texas Baptist Committed Board of Directors. All of you who have a part in the program tonight, and I'll have a few more words to say about the panelists in a little bit. And all of you for coming, for your friendship, for your support of the ministry of Texas Baptist Committed through the years. Your presence means more to me than I can ever adequately express. Last December in San Angelo, I spoke at David Currie's roast, and I followed Bobby Broyles to the podium. Tonight, I follow George Mason, Suzii Paynter, David Currie, and Charlie Johnson. Whatever else people may say about me, they have to admit, I keep good company. Thank you, Marv, Knox, and Babs Baugh. I'll say a little bit more about Babs in a little bit. Thank you so much, Marv Knox, for your beautiful affirming words there. When the Texas Baptist Committed Board and I decided it was time to shut down TBC, we unanimously agreed to send our few remaining funds, and more importantly, our database of supporters, to Fellowship Southwest, the rightful heirs of the TBC legacy. The Baptist movement is at risk here in Texas these days. The commitment of the Baptist General Convention of Texas, the BGCT, to Baptist principles is in question. We hold fast to these historic Baptist principles: the autonomy of the local church, the priesthood of all believers, the God-given right and responsibility of each believer to interpret Scripture under the leadership of the Holy Spirit, religious liberty for all people. Because we believe these principles are shaped by the Spirit of Jesus Christ, just as we seek to be as individual believers and as church fellowships. Political organizing is not the mission of Fellowship Southwest, as was TBC's during the 1990s battle for the BGCT. But the missions and advocacy carried out by Fellowship Southwest are underpinned by those same Baptist principles. And we can trust Fellowship Southwest to carry TBC's legacy forward. My path to this evening still amazes me. I'm a Baptist layperson whom God has blessed and surprised, quite frankly, with opportunities for service and leadership in the Baptist world that I could never have imagined. and with the opportunity to get to know so many people like you, Baptist leaders, pastors, and laity just like me, who have blessed my life. I'm so thankful to God, and I'm so thankful for each one of you. I joined the TBC board in January 2006, so I worked with David Currie for almost 4 years before he left in late 2009. After David left TBC, our board spent a year in the wilderness, so to speak. Our newsletter stopped, and many of our supporters thought TBC was gone. We spent a year trying to figure out whether we should continue. In late 2010, the TBC board asked me to succeed David Currie, effective January 2011. There were things I wanted to achieve that never saw the light of day. We continued to be strapped for funds, and I had to be a one-person executive staff. So some of my dreams for TBC had to remain just that. My main focus during those years was to support Texas Baptist churches, and especially to help churches under attack by the Southern Baptist of Texas Convention. At the 2011 BGCT annual meeting, church strategists asked me for TBC's help in fighting the SBTC and saving BGCT churches, and we were only too glad to give it. For churches that reached out to us, we provided information to counter the lies that the SBTC was telling about the BGCT, education about Baptist principles and the importance of standing up for them, and resumes of pastoral candidates who would faithfully uphold those principles and adhere to them. It was also important that we keep the BGCT free and faithful, so I played a key role in recruiting almost every candidate for BGCT office during my tenure at TBC, and the BGCT leadership welcomed my help. A couple of my initiatives I instituted in 2011, TBC Weekly Baptist Roundup, e-newsletter, and Baptist Briefs videos worked out better than I expected. In May 2011, I started publishing a weekly e-newsletter linking to Baptist news and opinion from a wide variety of sources. I stopped it last July, but resumed publishing it in May without the TBC name and at my own expense, under a compulsion that God still wants me doing it. I've already received donations that will pay for the first year of the e-newsletter service. God is providing. Over 800 Baptists open Weekly Baptist Roundup in their email every week. Thank you to the journalists at the Baptist Standard, Baptist News Global, Ethics. And by the way, I got a wonderful email from David Wilkinson tonight. Not able to be here, but saying he knew it was going to be a wonderful night. Baptist News Global, Ethics Daily, Word and Way, and elsewhere. And the many bloggers and op-ed writers. These journalists and writers provide the content each week for the Roundup. They do the heavy lifting. All I do is link to their good work. In the first months of January 2011, I produced in my study at home 71 2 to 3 minute videos on Baptist history and principles, which I called Baptist Briefs, and put them on the TBC website. These videos have been acclaimed by the Baptist History and Heritage Society, and in 2012, the Southern Baptist Historical Library and Archives in Nashville, Tennessee, requested a set of Baptist Briefs DVDs for which they made a $75 donation to Texas Baptist Committee. That's $75 of the SBC's money, folks, and we've got our videos with TBC's name and website in their Historical Library and Archives. In March 2011, I did a series of 6 Baptist Briefs videos on the youth revival movement that had begun at Baylor in 1944. In preparation for that series, I read over 2 nights the book Riding the Wind of God, A Personal History of the Youth Revival Movement by Bruce McKeever, the late pastor of Wilshire, George's predecessor. To this day, no book has moved me like this one. The first night I was in tears because of the reading of the faith of those students at Baylor who God had laid it on their hearts that Waco needed revival, but they knew they weren't up to the task, so they spent 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, night after night, praying in the dorm together. The first night I was crying about that, just overwhelmed by their faith. Second night, I paced around our living room in tears crying out to God. Why? Because I was reading the names of men involved in this youth revival movement, some of whom I was now working with over 60 years later, particularly on the T.B. Maston Foundation board. I cried out to God, Lord, these men have done more for you than I can ever imagine doing. Are you sure you know what you're doing, letting me work side by side with them? I don't belong in such company. Then came the still small voice of God, not audible like mine, but just as real, saying, that's not your concern. Your only concern is to do what I've called you to do. 4 years earlier, my niece Stephanie had eloquently characterized her grandparents, my parents, at Daddy's memorial service by saying their main characteristic was faithfulness. God brought Stephanie's words back to my mind that night, along with the example set by my parents, telling me to just be faithful to what He had called me to do. That night, my friends, has shaped my work, my ministry at both TBC and the Maston Foundation, my life, and all of my relationships and responsibilities ever since. My years at TBC were marked by close collaboration on many initiatives with our friends at the BGCT. Then came 2016, when I felt compelled to speak out at our TBC breakfast with the support of our board against the action David Hardage and the BGCT were taking to expel churches that did not cooperate with its hardline stance regarding LGBTQ people. I understand this was not a surprise to them because I had already had these discussions with David Hardage one-on-one and with Steve Vernon over the last couple of years before that. That morning, I called it a violation of local church autonomy, a Baptist principle under which churches are free to disagree on non-essential points of theology while still cooperating on the essential mission that unites us, taking the love of Jesus to a hurting world. Ultimately, my efforts did nothing to change the position of the BGCT leadership or the vote of BGCT messengers. However, I've since had many people come to me and thank me for the stand we took, including that morning after the breakfast. We were able to give encouragement to people who felt they were all alone on this issue. That has meant an awful lot. Even some BGCT staffers have thanked me for the stand we took. Now let's shift gears. I want to share with you a few of the people who have been key contributors to my life and work and the ministry of Texas Baptist Committed. This is the condensed version. I want you to know I've gone through a lot of drafts of these remarks, by the way. It's cut down considerably from where it started. I edit myself even more brutally than I edit you, David. I want you to know that. So I will elaborate on some of these people and others in a blog post or two in the coming week at BillJonesWritings.com. Start with Mother and Daddy. My parents, Jason Vivian Jones, and my relationship with them can best be illustrated by how they treated me when I lost my faith in God early in my sophomore year at Oklahoma Baptist University. Mother and Daddy's patience with me, their love for me, was critical to my finding my way through that difficult time. When I told them I no longer believed in God, but was searching, Daddy, a longtime Baptist minister, said that he understood, that he had gone through something similar when he was young, and that this was something I needed to do for myself. But I always knew that he was there, available if I had any questions or just wanted to talk. My dear mother loved with an unconditional love beyond anything I could fathom. By the time Joanna and I married in 1976, I had found a new relationship with God, one that was truly my own, a journey in which I had more questions than answers, a journey that continues today. Through the years, I followed the battle taking place in the Southern Baptist Convention. At the same time, I began reading more about Baptist history and principles and began to speak up for those principles in Sunday school classes. In March 2000, I perceived in statements made by the pastor of our church in Plano an attempt to move the church toward fundamentalism. This is what David Currie mentioned a while ago. So I wrote that pastor a letter that challenged what he was doing and clearly stated where I believed SBC leaders had turned their backs on Baptist principles. A few months later, I sent a copy of that letter to David Currie because I felt he should know what was going on at this growing, influential Plano church. Since that time, there have been a number of people who have been key to my growing involvement in Baptist life. Janet and Jim Dennison, my first encouragers on the road to greater involvement in Baptist life, helping to provide documentation I needed for that letter to my pastor. David Currie, who has been responsible either directly or indirectly for every opportunity for service I've had in Baptist life over the past 18 years. Charles Wade, Bill Brewster, Clyde Glazner, Betty Law, early encouragers on this journey toward greater involvement in Baptist life and continuing to encourage me today. Phil Strickland and Suzii Paynter, who listened to me and encouraged me in the early 2000s when I would stop by the Christian Life Commission booth at the BGCT annual meeting and share my frustrations regarding the direction of my church. More than anyone else, Phil Strickland was key in getting Joanna and me here to Wilshire in 2004 when we had decided it was time to leave our church in Plano. Foy Valentine, who in 2003, over lunch at Chuck's, a hamburger joint near his home in Dallas, listened to my frustrations regarding the direction of our church in Plano. And if you knew Foy, never one to mince words. He said, "You'll never convert that preacher." As usual, Foy was right. I'm so glad that Foy's daughter Jean is with us tonight. Joe Truell, who in the spring of 2004 published in Christian Ethics Today an article I had written on the subject of race entitled "Walking as Jesus Walked, in Our Neighbor's Shoes." That was huge for this layperson to be published in a journal that was then and still is the best thing I get in my mailbox. Joe has since become a dear friend and strong influence in my life. Members of the Texas Baptist Committed Board. Though I was the executive leader of the organization, I answered to the board, and all of us considered this a collaborative partnership. But you also need to know how they responded when my son Travis suffered a massive stroke in April 2013. Travis was in hospitals for 2.5 months, and the only TBC work I did for those 2.5 months was TBC Weekly Baptist Roundup, usually on my laptop at the hospital. The Roundup was my therapy at that time, briefly taking my mind away from what was going on around me. One morning in June, near the end of Travis's hospital stay, during a conference call with the TBC board, I thanked them for their patience and understanding. Wesley Shotwell, who is here now, he was not here earlier, he was chairing the TBC board at that time, replied, "We're just glad to be able to walk through this time with you." And the rest of the board members echoed Wesley's sentiment. I don't know when I've ever been so moved by the love of friends. They will always be close to my heart for the love and understanding they showed me during the greatest crisis of my family's life. Suzii Paynter and Rick McClatchy. Where's Rick? There's Rick. I mentioned Suzii earlier, but she deserves a second mention here. Suzii and Rick have been my two primary mentors in my efforts to lead two influential Baptist organizations. In March 2012, I was elected chair of the T.B. Maston Foundation. I'm not a preacher, didn't go to seminary, really didn't have any preparation to lead one Baptist organization, let alone two at one time. I knew I needed people I could trust who had more experience at that sort of thing than I did. I could call Suzii or Rick whenever I needed. They consistently gave me much needed guidance and encouragement. And there's your line that we already did. Babs Baugh, Jackie Baugh Moore, and to tell you the truth, I don't think I have met Julie, but I've heard a lot about her. And the Eula May and John Baugh Foundation. They have been generous with donations to TBC, but more than that, I love and appreciate Babs and Jackie as trusted friends. Every time I speak to Babs, I come away humbled. As stalwart a Baptist as I consider myself, and I do, I still have a long way to go to aspire to be the Baptist that Babs is. Her commitment to our Baptist principles and her fierce dedication in defending that Baptist heritage always inspires and challenges me. Bob Stevenson. Bob's the main reason TBC lasted as long as we did. Bob, who was a member of our board throughout my tenure, joined the TBC movement back in the early 90s in the thick of the battle for the BGCT. From 2011 through 2015, 5 years, Bob, in effect, paid my salary, part-time salary of our financial manager, Jill Farragher, expenses for our booth and breakfast at the BGCT, and so forth. When we needed money for, say, BGCT expenses or a mail-out, all I had to do was call Bob, tell him the need. And he'd usually send more than I asked for. As much as I appreciated Bob's financial generosity, I've enjoyed his friendship even more. Sometimes I would call Bob simply to update him on the latest goings on with TBC. I felt I owed him that. However, he never made any demands on me. He told me more than once, "Bill, don't feel like you need to call me about all this. I trust you to do what's right." And sometimes I called him just to chat about the latest happenings in Baptist life. Charlie Johnson. Charlie was a member of our TBC board throughout my tenure, and I've had the privilege of serving on the Board of Pastors for Texas Children, of which Charlie is executive director since its inception 5 years ago. I know few joys greater than working with my friend Charlie Johnson on these matters of such great importance to both of us. Charlie is a Baptist prophet who speaks truth to power, and I'm proud to be his friend and colleague. Epiphany class. And I'm sorry if it embarrassed you to have to stand a while ago, but I asked Lance to do that. Because for almost 14 years, beginning only a few weeks after we joined Wilshire, Joanna and I have enjoyed the fellowship of the wonderful people in the Epiphany Sunday School class. These folks ask hard questions, challenge each other, push each other's buttons, learn from each other, and at the end of the day, love each other, pray for each other, and encourage each other. And it means more than I can express that so many of these friends have shown up tonight to support me. George Mason. For 14 years, George Mason's bold and prophetic preaching have helped to shape my theology, which is much broader and deeper than it was when we came to Wilshire. George Mason and Wilshire Baptist Church gave generously to support TBC's ministry. George was also a mentor to me in those last couple of years at TBC. It was a conversation with George that helped me to stop playing it safe when it came to the BGCT and its hardline stand on churches and their treatment of LGBTQ people. Even now, I know that some friends in this room disagree with me on this issue, and I understand that. But that conversation with George made me realize I needed to follow my convictions on this issue if I were to be true to myself and true to the charge that I had to lead Texas Baptist Committed. One personal note about George's pastoring. When Travis suffered his stroke late on the night of April 1st, 2013, and the doctors came in around midnight to tell our family he had a 50-50 chance of surviving, and by the way, he survived pretty well. Thank God. I texted everyone I could, asking them to pray, and immediately began receiving assurances of prayer. We slept, or tried to sleep anyway, through the next few hours in the family room, just off of the ICU where Travis lay clinging to life. At 6 a.m., George Mason walked into that family room and sat down and prayed with us. Thank you, George. T.B. Maston and the Maston Foundation. I've had the T.B. Maston influence in my life since the day I was born. Daddy was then studying under Dr. Maston and received his Ph.D. in Christian ethics when I was 5. Dr. Maston was the greatest influence in Daddy's life, and Daddy has been the greatest influence in mine. Daddy played a key role in establishing the T.B. Maston Foundation in the late 1970s and chaired it for the first dozen or so years of its existence. What a special honor it was to lead that ministry that has been so close to my heart for so long, and to continue to serve it as a trustee, and to work alongside people like Maston students Jimmy Allen, James Dunn, Weston Ware, I saw Weston a while ago, Bill Pinson, Joe Truell, and many other special people. Well, you can see why I might feel a tad unworthy and overwhelmed. Finally, my family, whose love and support mean more to me with each passing year. My sister Patsy and her husband, Palmer McCown, and their family, including their daughter Stephanie Markgraf, who is here tonight, and son Michael, who is in Germany, where he sings with the Frankfurt Opera. Michael presented a wonderful concert of hymns here at Wilshire last summer. Allison and Travis both continue to make us proud. The best choice Allison ever made is sitting next to her tonight. She and Adam celebrated their 13th anniversary earlier this week. Allison and Adam have 3 children, and Travis has 1. And despite what you may think about your grandchildren, our 4 are truly the smartest, most beautiful grandkids on the planet. And last, but most important, Joanna. Okay, now I'm getting choked up. On September 4th, we will celebrate 42 years of married life. We've been through a lot together. That happens when you're married that long. And thank God every bit of it has brought us closer together. Joanna gives and gives and gives, especially when it comes to family. That same unconditional love that my mother always gave. She's not only the love of my life, but I've come to admire and respect her more than anyone I know. Thank you again for being here tonight, for all you mean to my family and me, for your support of Real Baptists, of Texas Baptist Committed, and of that ministry that goes forward in new venues, new ventures. And I pray that you'll continue to support Fellowship Southwest and wherever all that goes in CBF, because there are still real Baptists around. We're not alone. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I love you.
Thank you all again for coming. If there is a theme to tonight, I would say that, this is not an end. This is a continuation. It is a new beginning. There were so many times when this could have been an end, or there could have been ends, to Bill Jones's story, to Texas Baptist Committed's story, to the story of those in this room who worked so hard for Baptist principles and Baptist dignity, and yet God keeps opening doors and keeps those stories going. So this is not an end to the legacy and the work of Texas Baptist Committed, but a new beginning as it lives on other places. And this is certainly not an end to the work that Bill Jones has done in our community and will continue to do, and we look forward to seeing where that goes. Thank you, Bill, for your service, and that concludes our evening tonight. Thank you.
Bill Jones, Big Bad Jones. God bless you, Bill.